Hello, and welcome to Talking Toddlers, where I share more than just tips and tricks on how to reduce tantrums or build your toddler's vocabulary. We're going to cover all of that, I assure you. But here, our goal is to develop clarity, because in this modern world, it's truly overwhelming, especially during these past 2 years. This podcast is about empowering moms to know the difference between fact and fiction, to never give up, to tap into everyday activities so your child stays on track. He's not falling behind, he's thriving through your guidance. We know that true learning starts at home, and Talking Toddlers, this podcast helps you develop that with clarity, confidence, and clear communication. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Talking Toddlers. I'm Erin Heyer, your host from Higher Learning. So this episode, I want to connect how we can actually save during the holidays, at the same time use these 12 tips as we go forth for the month of December and into the new year and into the new season, and really connect the two, because holidays, as you know, can get a little crazy, right? I'm hoping to just help you be more mindful, be purposeful, especially when you have little kids. They don't really understand the whole holiday experience. We're building emotional memories, not necessarily physical memories. They don't remember the toys. They don't remember how many presents were under the trees. They really, really don't. And I knew this clinically. And then when I had my daughter, and now that she's 22, and I ask her specific questions about when she was 3 and 4 and 5, and she really does have a remarkable memory and a great understanding, but she doesn't remember the details. What is important, what we're building, are the emotional connections, the family memories and those feelings of whether it was positive or happy or gay or lighthearted or just, blessed. And I think when they're especially under 4, again, with these babies and these toddlers, less is more. And especially in 2022, and as we approach 2023, think of the economics, think of your home life, think of your home lifestyle. Make it easy, make it more engaging, more personal, and keep it simple. And share these concepts or these wishes with your family, your extended family, right? What are your intentions for this holiday? To spend more quality time together, to have opportunities to be present and playful, and to do things together versus having stuff, right? And some of my rules of thumb as we go into the holidays, as we enter this new season and a new year, right? Keep it simple, no batteries for those toddlers. And I explained a little bit last week, and I'll continue why it's important, and the different types of toys that you can keep your eye on, and keep it simple, right? And you can easily rotate these toys. Some of you might understand what rotating toys mean. We can talk more in depth, but it's keeping the playroom or play area or their bedroom or wherever you have all of their quote unquote stuff, to keep it simple, right? A few bins, work and play with them for a couple of weeks, and then change them up a bit. Have, the idea that you're trying to instill or build your child's curiosity, and that it's really about doing and being with you that drives this learning and drives their human connection. So the tools or / toys are just that. They help facilitate this and have fun and be engaged, but it's really about being with family members that help them learn and build their understanding of this world around them. And that's what your goal is, right? So with all of that in mind, I want to kind of explain a little bit of, what's my driving force behind these messages, behind kind of going out to a larger audience, helping new moms feel more empowered and inspired to really step up, to truly take those reins and know that their child's growth and development, emotional well-being is in their hands, right? And how I've always said, I'm speaking more directly with moms, but dads, you are there too. And grandparents, you are always, always important in your child's life. And if you're blessed enough to live in driving distance, that is even truly more awesome. But I recognize that dads will often follow our lead. And especially in those first few years, it's a little bit more, I believe, uncomfortable or just different being a dad versus being a mom. But once your child is a little bit more mobile, they're starting to really build their vocabulary and the verbal expression, they're more engaged and connected, then dads really step it up too. So it's really that first 12, 14, 16 months, that's a little bit more, they're following our lead. As we enter this toddler phase, dads are going to typically be much more involved. So dads, I want you to listen to about how the movement and the language build together. And it's not always about that rough and tumble play or being physical with your kids, that the language stimulation is important for you to model too. And one of the reasons why I often will speak more directly with the moms is because over my 35 years of practice, I'd say 97% of the time, it was the mom that brought the baby or the toddler in, because I think they felt the need more. Maybe it was the scheduling thing, but I entered this professional career when moms were working full-time too. Quite often, I'd have lawyer moms bring the child in for therapy at 7:30 in the morning before they went to the office, or educators or whatever bringing their kids for therapy to me after school. But I think it goes back to moms feeling in their gut, and they're the ones that are typically the ones giving credence to that voice, that something's a little bit off, that yes, my child is quote unquote healthy and happy, but the timing is off. Or they're the ones that are saying, I don't want to just wait. I don't want to be on a waiting list. And I don't want to just minimize because he's a boy or expect less because he's a boy. I do accept him for all that he is, but if a child is not flourishing and thriving in a consistent manner, then it's worth a conversation, right? So I want to continually focus on a healthy development, and that parenting is a journey. So is development, but you are learning on the job, and that prevention is incredibly possible, and that the numbers continue to increase with kids falling into these delayed or deficient kind of boxes, but prevention is key. And that because of neuroplasticity, because the brain is designed to grow and develop and wire and rewire through one's life experience, that you can navigate or manipulate the environment and their experience to build stronger and stronger skills, physical skills, linguistic skills, emotional regulation skills, attention and memory and organizational skills. And these 12 tips that are designed to reduce the pressures of these holidays, but also to reduce everyday pressures, right? And so what I really focus on is what do we know for sure? What has worked consistently in the past? What is logical, clinically supported, or research-based at the same time that is just human nature, right? And that I encourage parents and educators and therapists and doctors and grandparents and all of us to continue to be open to learning, that change is possible if we're open to exploring how can we do things differently to bring things in better alignment. And I always go back to neuroplasticity because that is what was the driving force in the 1990s with technology and neuroscience coming together and giving us such remarkable tools and better understanding of how humans grow and learn at all ages, right? From birth to death. So let's continue with this list. I'm on number 5, and that would be open-ended toys. And that's why I wanted to bring these things together as the holidays open. I think this episode is going to be released somewhere around Thanksgiving. And so these next 3-4 weeks are really, really important for families and for you to maybe reduce some of that stress. You don't have to buy, trunk loads full of stuff. There's so much garbage out there. And I am working on a couple of both a podcast and a YouTube looking at evaluating some toys and what are my top 5 picks for certain age groups. But here I wanted to give you this broad range of look for and think about open-ended toys. And you're like, okay, what the heck does that mean? Because one of the most frequently asked questions I get are like, what kind of toys do I get for a toddler, who doesn't seem to have quote unquote attention or engagement yet, and the language, and how do I do this? Think about toys that are more 90% child driven and 10% toys. The old story like, oh, I bought them this great, building kit or this great dollhouse, and they liked the box it came in more. Because a 1, 2, and 3-year-old, we're zoning in on those toddler years, they don't really understand all the parts yet, right? They're interested in putting things inside other compartments. They're things that they can carry, that they can kind of be creative with in their loose and kind of free thinking environment. So think about a variety of uses, right, that you can use with this toy, and that it will cross different ages, that when they're 1.5 and when they're 5.5, they can continue to use those at different levels. So think of blocks, of course. That is kind of the classic. But you can build a tower, you can build a castle, but you can also use it as a telephone, or you can use it as a car, or you could build different rooms, and you can use and there are all kinds of different blocks, right? Wooden blocks are classics, different sizes, different colors, different shapes. So in the background are those academic elements. And I've shared with you before that, especially during those toddler years, don't push academics early. Like, let's know your numbers, let's know your colors and sizes, and that's rote data. But we want to use them so they're aware of, oh, these are all red blocks, and they can go together to build the red house. And these are all green blocks, and they can all go together, and we can pretend that that's the forest, right? Because the forest is green. We can make associations and concepts with those And later on, through sorting and organizing, they can build those academic skills. But when they're 1, 2, and 3, they're still building that foundation to language processing. Their expressive language processing and their receptive language processing, how well they understand. So, this open-ended toys could include blocks, some play silks. Those are always a nice gift. Very creative scarves or dress-up clothes. Again, you can do all kinds of different play activities with them. Magnetic tiles are wonderful. I love them, and they've evolved over the last couple of decades. Think about when you're a 1 or 2-year-old is trying to build stuff. It's hard to balance if you're just using regular blocks. And Duplos or Legos, different sizes, those are great, but that's kind of a different connection. The magnetic blocks are wonderful again because they're colorful, they're easily manipulated, connected, but that your child wants to really hone their skills of working at midline, right? Bringing the right hand and the left hand together and putting things together and then pulling them apart. There's different shapes and sizes. You can be really, really creative. And the cool part is you can take all of these different kinds of blocks and magnetic tiles and build a very elaborate whatever, whether it's a castle or a whole town or a farm or different rooms, or just make this elaborate maze, right? But you can use different elements and build it together. It's multi-purposeful, right? And then part of that could be in this open-ended category are different animals, little people, little figurines. You can even use what people refer to as the stuffies, right? The little beanie babies. They come in all different sizes and shapes, and again, become very, very elaborate with different animals and, building farms or putting them all in a truck and, taking them to out into pasture or feeding them, waking them up, and feed the animals. Oh my gosh, your piggy is thirsty. What does he need? Listening to questions and answers, following directions. Oh, let's rescue all the ducks because the storm is coming and they need to be safe and secure in this little cave over here, which you built in the magnetic tiles. And you can be very creative, and that's what you want in this stage, to build their creative thinking, to increase their imagination. And in episodes, I think 18 and 19, possibly even 20, I really introduced the whole science of play and how important play is. And it's not about numbers and colors and letters, but it's about building that imagination and becoming very elaborate with their thinking and being fantastical with their ideas, right? Oh, come on, ducky, you can, jump in the back of this truck and we're going to drive you to this safe, secure, whatever, cave or house or whatever, and I've had kids take these big elaborate wooden beds and turn them over and turn them into vehicles or boats to save people or to get across the river. Again, you're wanting kids to pretend to be imaginative and elaborate with their thought process. And it's open-ended. That's what you want. You want them to be engaged. So keep in mind, open-ended toys, no batteries, right? No flashing lights, no single-purpose toy, right? And you do have some single-purpose that are helpful and engaging, and you can build like puzzles, right? Or even bubbles. That's typically a single purpose, but those are things that you would introduce, 12 months and under, 18 months and under. Puzzles, of course, are exceptionally fine toys, and there's multi-levels, right? From the easy big blocks that their chunky little hands can fit, and as they improve in their fine motor, their visual motor integration, right? Sliding it around and adjusting the square, realizing that the square doesn't fit in the triangle or that the pig is upside down. So a lot of visual motor directionalities, how parts fit together as a whole. All, of course, puzzles are incredibly important in this early development, but it is also, for the most part, a single purpose use. And yet I've had kids play a matching game with me where you take puzzles of animals and you take figurines of animals and you take pictures of animals and you put them all together and you sort them. And, so there's a lot of creative game-like things that you can do with these different parts, but you don't want just a bunch of toys all scattered willy-nilly. You want them to be creative in these open-ended toys and then more purposeful in these less open-ended, like puzzles. And bubbles are great especially when they're very, very young. It's just a great attention getter. It's a great taking turns, you blow, I blow. It's also very, very important to teach your little one, your 14-month, 16-month, 18-month-old, how to, round their lips and inhale and exhale in a controlled fashion that supports speech and vocalization. So blowing bubbles are very, very fun and engaging too, but it really has a single purpose. Other things like Mr. Potato Head, which is just kind of a hallmark of my practice. It, again, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, they love it too, but it's really a nice introduction to getting a kid or a very, very young child, 14, 16, 18 months, engaged with me, learning body parts, making it funny. And there's all kinds of, I have Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. I have baby potato heads. I have, mustaches and hats and purses and all kinds of accessories. And that's a remarkable thing to do with your 1 to 1.5 to 2-year-old, especially if you think that there's a language delay and you want to build that engagement and that social connection and that shared play together. Have him up in his high chair, you're face to face, eye to eye. You can really engage with them. And so Mr. Potato Head is wonderful, wonderful at that level. That's a little bit different than the open-ended toys. So number 6 on this list, and again, think about this as you're going into the holidays, is to be creative. And I don't mean arts and crafts creative, although that is one of the 12 that's included in this list. But I'm thinking of how to repurpose objects around the house. And think of Tupperware, cookware that isn't breakable or sharp, clothes, old baby clothes that you can now put on your dolls or your bears, boxes that can be put together and can be made into cars or vehicles, or that can be colored, or that have tops and bottoms that you can put smaller objects in. Repurpose markers and cleaning tools. Again, kids really, really love doing things with you. As I said in an earlier episode about, everyday activities, getting them engaged, getting their own little duster, their own little broom, gardening, repurpose get a plastic shovel, give a bucket that he can fill with water and help you water the garden. Even some cosmetics or makeup that they can put on their dollies and then wash off, or put on themselves and wash off. I do nowadays encourage parents to look at, more organic and clean, because the makeups can be pretty toxic. But even just, putting lotion on, or putting rouge or blush, getting some of your old brushes and use them, or hair clips and all of those kinds of fine motor things that they're going to play with their stuffies and their dolls or their animals or whatever. And think of, different parts too that can be repurposed, like lids and snaps, right? Lids, snaps, and then latches. I think that's what I was connecting. Different Tupperwares that have different tops, more than just turning on a lid, but they have snaps on the side, or things that can stack or nest inside one another. Again, they're thinking through how these parts fit together. They're using their right hand and their left hand. They're working at midline. They're crossing midline to reach. Oh, can you get me the yellow top? I need the yellow top to go with this lid, or to go with this box. And they can reach over. So they have to do things. They have to act and create and build and just be free flowing with thought, right? At the same time, you'll see their skills as they move from kind of a busy, active, non-purposeful 16-month-old to a more thoughtful 24-month-old, to a more verbal 26-month-old. And that, then their characters will start talking, and they'll have voices, and they'll take turns with you. And we'll talk about that. That's on this list. But be creative, repurpose things around the house. Again, you don't have to run outside or run to the toy store or order umpteen things online. That you can look, simply at, the drugstore or the dollar store, and be creative with building them a garden kit, or building them their very own little cleaning kit. Keep it simple. And I think that, parents will often ask me, to come up with ideas of, how do I really play with my 1.5-year-old or 2-year-old? It's pretty obvious when you have a puzzle, or it's pretty obvious when you have blocks, but how do you expand upon that? How do you help model all of the wonderful imaginative things that he or she can do with that, right? And I think we grown-ups struggle because whether you're 25 or 35 or 45, we're kind of far, far away from our own inner child, right? The last time we really just kind of played with toys was 100 years ago, it feels like. But I'm asking parents, to find that inner child, to just be present, to just flow with, what do I have here, and how can I make this fun and funny with our child, right? And with Mr. Potato Head, that's hilarious. You can put his little hat on your head and go, ha, ha, choo, and it falls off. Or you can build the blocks and crash it with the bear, ah, ha, ha, laugh. And you can really just be lighthearted, and they will thrive and build their engagement with you, build their attention, and anticipate, gosh, what is this crazy mom or dad going to do next? Okay, so number 7 are sensory bins. And that's become pretty popular over the last 10, 15 years. And generalizing into the homes. It used to just be in the preschool centers and daycare centers, because they were trying to model what play would be like in the quote unquote old days at home, right? You'd be in the backyard and you would dig a hole in the dirt and fill it with water and, get the sensation with the mud and the rocks and cold and wet and dry and sand and digging and all of that. And so what the toy industry did and our educational system did was then just pick that idea up and make it in a formal, quote unquote, structured play setting, and made plastic toys to model that. And you can also think about some of the other ideas I referred to last week about using real life activities like cooking and cleaning and gardening that, again, repurpose things around the house. Let them be with you if you're pulling weeds or if you're sweeping the floor, and experience that activity with you. And I do think that there are benefits to having sensory bins, but you don't have to do that. You can think about all the different textures. And, sometimes kids don't really like it in the beginning, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that they have a deficit. It doesn't mean that their sensory system is out of whack. It just means that their system hasn't become acclimated. And so some kids need just subtle experiences to be barefoot in the grass or to walk on the sand. And if they overreact in the beginning, then slowly introduce it to them again and again and again in little small bites. And then their sensory system matures and it continues to grow. So don't put that all off or into, oh my gosh, he has a diagnosis or a disorder, or he's just, has sensory issues. Every child, has their own kind of fluency, their own kind of rhythm to growth and development. We still need those milestones. We still need to be mindful of what's expected. But let's go back to neuroplasticity. We can wire and rewire. You and I can be acclimated to different environments, right? And we can change our neural network. Your baby, your toddler is ripe for change and growth and development. We just have to kind of find their pace, right? So other things that could be in sensory bins, you could make homemade Play-Doh. Again, go on the internet. There's a wealth of information and ideas. I, have never been really good at different types of Play-Doh, but in the last few years, a couple of preschool teachers have given me some pretty good recipes, and I'll share with you those recipes and give you some links. I also really like different kinds of therapeutic putty because they have different strength to them. Some of them are softer than others. Some of them you can work. But they're different gooey textures. Some are tough and rough. And again, because our modern world we don't use a lot of natural tools, that our kids really do need a lot of object play. And I mentioned that in a previous episode, what object play is. And so all of these toys, the blocks, the people, the dress up, cooking and cleaning and gardening, digging, scraping, all of those really help not only their fine motor, but the visual motor connection, the judgment of strength. How far do I have to cut this Play-Doh? Is the Play-Doh soft and gooey and gushy, or is it kind of tough putty? Demonstrating a lot of physical development, but it's also language processing and making judgments in feedback in real time. You, mom and dad and grandparent and caretaker, you are there to demonstrate and encourage and be their cheerleader. Lots of fun things, you hide things in the sensory bins, but you can also hide them in the Play-Doh and hide them in the therapeutic putty, and they have to, pull to save the different little animals, and really, work with it intention, right? You don't want your child to just be kind of haphazard and give it a half-ass job or try like to try to get the alligator out of the putty. It's like, no, you can do it. He needs your help. He needs it. Keep going. Dig, dig, dig. And you can work together. Here, you take one end. I take the other end. We stretch it out and pop comes the alligator. And be creative with it. I think it's obvious that speech and language, vocabulary is really supportive through these play activities. And be cognizant, mom and dad, that you're wiring his brain when he does things, physical things. He's listening to your language and your input. And he's watching you and modeling you and imitating you, and that you're encouraging him to try different textures, to work harder, to resist, and push or pull, to dig his fingers in, to manipulate and have that pincher grip and have use plastic utensils to cut or poke or dig, push, roll, all of those kinds of things in a variety of textures. So it can be sensory bin that you create on your own, or it can just be outdoor play, and just be mindful and thoughtful of how much exposure and opportunity does he or she ultimately, like I've said before, you want that 7-year-old to be able to sit at a desk and to manage a pencil and to be able to read and write and listen to directions and not be bothered by the kid who just fell off his chair. All of these high order, more academic processing systems. And it all begins when they're 1 and 2, and you're playing with them with putty, and you're helping them dig a hole in the backyard and bury some rocks, and you're helping them manage, a big pile of leaves and jumping in it. All of these things are wiring his neurological system, his language processing network and his physical body in this 3-dimensional space, and is on or through your guidance and your direction. And so keep those things in mind when you're thinking about Christmas shopping or holiday shopping or birthday shopping or any of this kind of stuff. Keep it simple, especially with those kids that are 3 and under. So this week we covered open-ended toys, to be creative, and to think about quote unquote sensory bins, but just also real life activities that could give a lot of sensory input. And perhaps how can you repurpose materials in your home that will help them explore and be creative and have hands-on learning with you, with your guidance, and have fun and get messy and explore all of the wonderful richness that is just in your home every day. So with the holidays right around the corner, keep listening, keep it simple. Less is more with your little ones, even with your 4 and 5-year-olds. Again, like I've said, they don't remember the stuff. They want to play with you, and I will continue this conversation. And I am working on a list of my top toy picks for different age groups. But right now, as you're searching, I hope you didn't get your Christmas shopping done in September. But think about this, and maybe even if you did, look at all the gifts that you have and say, 1, could I return it? No, I'm kidding. But 2, do I have to give all of these to them, him or her, at one time? Can we have, Christmas and then maybe something special on New Year's Day, and maybe something special on Valentine's Day, and maybe something special on St. Patrick's Day? You can spread it out. They don't have to have, 100 gifts. So keep it simple. we're living in kind of, unknown territory. The economy is really, really shaky. I know a lot of people have, changed their work, their family life. So don't put so much pressure on yourself, and think about as no to little batteries as possible. Rotate the toys, expand, the gift giving for the next 3-6 months. Be creative though. Be creative, and don't get feeling pressured that more is better. They don't remember how many gifts were under the tree. I'm just telling you. But they do remember the feelings about being with you and playing with you and singing with you and walking with you and rolling in the snow with you, or throwing, dirty leaves up in the air and rolling down the hill, and all of those wonderful, joyous toddler activities. And that we will continue this conversation. But with the holidays right around the corner, save, be present, be loving. Less is more. Okay. So on that note, thank you once again for sharing your precious time with me. If you're finding benefit with these episodes, please share. Help me expand this conversation and help moms and dads just like you. I'm on a mission to reach 10,000 new moms in this new year in 2023, because I know you're ready to take charge. I'll do it with you. I'll help you. I'll guide you. You have this, and they need you more than anybody else. You're their number one fan, their number one influencer, and you will always be their number one love. So God bless. I'll see you next week. Happy Talking Toddlers.